Glendon Rusch is joining us tonight for Chicago SABR meeting. Looks like we're going to have some people on the call from actually all over the country. Glendon, thanks for being here tonight, taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. And at SABR, we're really interested in history, diving deep on all kinds of things baseball. I know just from following you on Twitter that you are a guy that just loves baseball. I could tell. So thanks for being here, and hopefully we have some fun tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I do. I love baseball. As my wife says, I'm married to her and baseball, so that is absolutely true.
I've heard that too. Yeah, so as far as your baseball career, from what I've been able to find, it looks like you pitched very well in high school in Washington. What was your experience like in terms of high school pitching and deciding whether to go to college or sign with the Royals?
Well, looking back on high school in Seattle, I feel like after going through it that I learned a lot of how to pitch through adversity, different weather conditions, cold, rainy, everything that went along with that. Sometimes a little longer to get warmed up out there, but I loved it. Had a tremendous experience in high school.
Talking about comes Dr. Saves Life.
Had an outstanding high school coach, Stan Taloff, up at Shorecrest High School in Washington, who I still talk to this day, 30 plus years later. So it was great. Made some lifelong friends playing baseball in high school, and I think that's honestly one of the most important things. Getting an opportunity to play and make friends and have those experiences. And most guys aren't fortunate enough to play past high school or let alone into college and in the professional ranks. So I was lucky that way.
And you grew up in the Seattle area?
Yes, I was just north of downtown in the shoreline area, kind of on the end of Lake Washington there, and went to Shorecrest High School and had a really neat area that we lived in up there. We're obviously close to the mountains and the Puget Sound and everything else. And I was just up there recently. My son played up in Victoria this summer in the West Coast Collegiate League, so I was up visiting my family in Seattle and spent some time up there.
And as far as growing up, were you a Mariners fan? I see you've got a Seahawks shirt on, so you're still a fan of the Seahawks. How about the Mariners?
I am. I'm a Seattle guy. I still follow the Mariners. Growing up, I was Mariners and Braves, like a lot of people that got caught into either having the Braves always on TV or the Cubs always on TV. So in Seattle, we were able to watch those three teams. I followed the Braves a lot. I think because I watched the pitching, learned a lot from watching Maddox, Glavine, kind of through those years in my high school years. And so, yeah, those are my two teams. I always followed Seattle sports. Hopefully we get the Sonics back at some point. That'll make me really happy.
Do you have favorite players? Who are your guys growing up?
Growing up, I was obviously Ken Griffey Jr. when he came along. Huge fan of his. Outside of the Mariners, I was a Jose Canseco, Doc Gooden, Darryl Strawberry. Those were kind of my guys, and then I followed the Braves pitchers. I mean, how could you not follow, Smoltz, Maddox, Glavine, and learn from those guys? And then of course when Randy Johnson was in Seattle, I love watching the big unit pitch.
Yeah, another lefty you have to look up to, regardless how tall you are, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just had to do everything he could do, but subtract 10 miles an hour off my fastball.
Yeah, so you're at the point where I believe you signed with Washington to pitch for the Huskies and then drafted by the Royals and decided to sign. What kind of went into your decision to go to pro baseball instead of pitching in college?
I think at that point in time in my life, I was 100% committed to baseball, and I felt like the minor leagues was my path, and I wanted that experience. Looking back, obviously, I think when you have the opportunity to go to college, get a degree, play baseball, and then potentially play professional baseball after that. I think sometimes that's a better option for people. I was really lucky, honestly, that I made it through the minor leagues in a pretty short amount of time, and I was healthy. And by the time what would have been my senior year at the University of Washington, I was in the big leagues. So I was very fortunate that way.
Very cool. And if you're pitching for the what was it, the Coast League Royals first, and it was the same year, right, that you're promoted up to the Rockford Royals?
Yep, yeah, they called me right when I had actually just gotten home from the Gulf Coast League, and they called me and said, we're going to send you to Rockford to make a start or two and then join them for the playoffs, which is really awesome experience. And got to join my longtime friend at that point, who was a Rockford Royal, Johnny Damon, who was just our #1 draft pick in 1992. And so he was on that team along with a lot of other guys that I met. And it was a great experience. I was only 18 years old, and then went back and went to instructional league after that. So that was a pretty long season, honestly, because I threw a lot of innings in high school that year. And then I think they probably treat it a lot different now than they did then. Looking back 31 years ago, if you were to say a guy made all his starts in high school, then went to Gulf Coast League, then a short promotion to Midwest League, and then come back and pitch in instructional league. I don't think guys do that anymore, just because of the quote unquote workload or however they want to, handle it.
Yeah, and so if you're in Rockford when you're 18 years old, is it Marabelli at that point? Was it?
Yes, it was.
And what are you doing in Rockford when you're 18 years old? What are you doing in your free time?
Nothing. I don't remember even. I was trying to remember even where I stayed when I went there. I can't remember if they put me with. They might have put me with a few other guys that were already there that had an apartment or something, but I don't even remember. It's been so long. But yeah, there wasn't a ton to do in Rockford. I just remember we were attached to that kind of park there, and we had this like 3 mile or so route we would run through there when we do our like long day of conditioning. I'll say like after you started, we'd run through this park, and that's one of the things that always sticks out to me about the old Rockford Royals.
And so you progressed pretty quickly then, right, through the Carolina League, and then right before you're promoted, you're with the Omaha Royals. What was playing for AAA in Omaha like?
It was really good experience. That was an extremely, I would say, higher aged veteran experienced league at that time. When you came to AAA in 96, every team was loaded with, guys with big league experience, guys that had been up and down. Probably different than AAA looks like now, I would say. I think, we had guys that had 5-6 years in the big leagues that were in that league at that point in time. That's just the way it worked then. So I was only 21 years old, so I gained a lot of experience, learned a lot, was around a bunch of good veteran guys that helped me kind of, how to be a pro and everything that went along with it.
And so by the end of 96, it looks like the AAA season's over. I expect you probably had your fingers crossed on a September call-up. It didn't look like it happened.
Yeah, I had heard some rumblings during that year that there was a possibility that I might get a call up, but to me, in all honesty, at that point in time, it seemed like that was on the other side of the mountain for me to even think about going to the big leagues. I was 21 in AAA, just skipped AA. I didn't pitch an inning in AA. They sent me from the Carolina League to AAA, which was a huge jump. And I was there the whole year and started that whole year. So I think I felt like I had accomplished as much as I could have that year without a big league call up.
And so 1997, then you make the club out of spring training then.
Yeah, made the club out of spring training, went in first year on the 40-man roster and made the club, which is virtually impossible to do. That's another thing I look back on, and just, everything kind of aligned that spring. I threw the ball well. I think they were impressed with my maturity and the ability to throw strikes and handle situations at a young age, and they gave me an opportunity, and you know, I was ecstatic. I remember walking out on the field. I think we played 2 exhibition games in Colorado that year before we broke camp. And when we went to Colorado, I still didn't know whether or not I made the team. And Bob Boone, who was our manager at the time, I was walking out to play catch, and he had stopped me and told me that I was going to Baltimore with them so I could pack my suitcase and get on the team flight after we left Colorado. That was a pretty cool feeling.
That is cool. Love it.
Yeah.
And so your first start with the Royals went okay. And I found this quote. It says, "I was a bit antsy and ready to get going. Once the game started, I was very comfortable, more comfortable than I thought." And so your Royals debut is basically a gem, right?
Yeah.
You've got April 6th now. It's in Minnesota. You're at the old Metrodome. How was it pitching in that place?
It was pretty cool. I was definitely absolutely nervous and antsy going into that. The only person that was able to get there to watch it was my brother, my oldest brother, Rob. He took a red eye from Seattle, and I remember having to open my hotel room door at like 4 or 5 in the morning because he had just got there, and he like laid on my floor because it was a day game, and he laid on my floor and, you know, slept for a few hours, and then I went to the ballpark. But yeah, me against Brad Radke, I remember that, and I remember Mike Sweeney being behind the plate, which was awesome because that was when Swing Dog was still catching before he, you know, converted into a first baseman a couple of years later. So it was pretty special. I think I could probably remember the lineup if you asked it to me, but I do remember that I got in a little bit of trouble in the first inning. Gave up a couple hits. I think we might have made an error or something, and at one point, I ended up with the bases loaded in the first inning and got out of it eventually, and then just kind of went on a run where I was just making good pitches and getting outs and pitching ahead and doing all the good stuff that you do when it's a good day. And it just kind of everything went my way, and then we ended up scoring a bunch of runs.
Yeah, so basically the way that the line went, 8 innings, 2 runs. Those first 2 runs given up in the game were both unearned after that error, 4 Ks. And then you went on and retired 19 in a row, not giving up your next hit until the 8th inning. It was quite a debut.
Yeah.
Were you thinking, wow, major leagues, this isn't all that hard? I got
Well,
that.
it's a perfect segue to Bob Boone's line that he said to me. I'll never forget it. I got on the bus after the game was over. It was getaway day. We were flying back to Kansas City, and you know, of course, I have this huge smile on my face, and I just had the greatest day of my life in baseball. And he looked at me and he's like, "It's not that easy, kid. Like, go sit down, get on the back of the bus with the other rookies, and keep quiet." Yeah, he was being funny about it, and it was great though. I'll never forget that.
And so in 99, you're traded from the Royals over to the Brewers then, right? Did you make a like one appearance or something like that in that year before the years was over?
Oh, yeah. So yeah, 99. I made. I started the year in AAA, and then I came up for like I think 5 days or something right before the trade deadline. They needed a pitcher. I came up for like 5 days, and I got sent back down. And then in September, I came up again, and I was about to make a start. We had a makeup doubleheader, and I was supposed to start the second game of the doubleheader, and they called me that morning and told me they had traded me to the Mets.
Oh,
And go get on a plane as soon as they had my flight and everything booked, and I went from waking up that morning to go pitch for the Royals to getting on a plane and meeting the Mets in Colorado.
how does it feel to get traded and kind of out of the blue like that?
That was tough. That one was because it was my first organization. You know, I was drafted by them, came up with them. Everyone that I knew in baseball was with Kansas City, so that was a shock. And then of course I went from, you know, a mid-market team and on the lower of the media pressure side to right into the pressure cooker, into the bright lights of New York City. Now, I came at a weird time because I came after the playoff trade deadline. So I wasn't eligible to be a part of that playoff run, but I was there and I got to be a part of that and watch those last 3+ weeks of the season. They went on that great run and won a 1-game playoff and, ended up in the NLCS that year. And so that alone was just great experience for me to be around it.
Yeah, and so as a Met, I saw this quote from Al Leiter, who kind of thought you were a little bit too nice, maybe, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
that you needed to get angry when you pitched. Is this something you remember?
Oh yeah, I remember walking off the mound and it probably was this game that you pulled up here. I remember walking off the mound in Port St. Lucie in the middle of one of my spring training starts, and he like grabbed me by the belt and like kind of pulled my pants up and yanked my hat down a little bit and was, he was like, "You're too nice. You need to be, you have to basically flip that switch when you're on the mound and into, the competitive demeanor," which I had, and it was always there, but I think maybe he was just trying to bring it out of me a little bit more.
And it looks like this pitch here, is that your circle change there?
Yeah, that's a changeup. Yeah, 4-seam changeup.
And so with the Mets, you got to actually pitch in the World Series, right?
Yeah.
What is it like to walk out to the mound in the World Series in New York against the Yankees?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at my World Series debut, it's about as tough of a situation as you could possibly come into. I came into a tie game in the 10th inning at Yankee Stadium, Game 1 of the World Series. Guys on first and second, nobody out. That was my entrance into the World Series. So I somehow Houdini'd my way out of that jam and got us into the 11th. We ended up losing, but it was incredible experience. I had a little bit under my belt since we played the Subway Series that year. So I was, during the regular season, got to see what it was all about, Mets, Yankees. But there's nothing like that. I think that city was as rocking and as crazy as I've ever seen in my life during that Subway Series in 2000.
And so I know that that you guys lost, yeah, and it's unfortunate because I don't know if there's any Yankees fans on the call here, and I just don't know how much sympathy I would have for a Yankees fan and feeling so sad for them. But I mean, as far as playing in that type of situation, are you thinking to yourself when you're up there, I'm in the World Series, or are you just locked in going, is I'm 60 feet 6 inches away from home plate, and I've done this a million times before. How does that go through your head?
I think you feel both. I think that I felt, wow, I'm in the World Series, but that was more pre-game, post-game, in between games, getting prepared. When you walk out and stand in that dugout step in Yankee Stadium and start looking around and seeing what that was all about. But as far as the competitive part, when you're in game, yeah, it's the same. You're trying to execute pitches and you understand your game plan against what hitters you're facing. We knew their lineup, they knew our lineup, and they really, if you boil it all down, they really just outpitched just a little bit in the bullpen. Stanton, Nelson, and Rivera were lights out against us. We lost 4 games by a total of 5 runs, I think, that series. So it was once they got the lead on us, we had a really hard time.
Yeah, it's rough. I mean, sometimes it's basically just baseball. It's timely hitting and timely pitching, and it's
Yep.
unfortunate. Yeah, that's where it goes. As far as 2001, you're playing in New York when 9/11 happens. I mean, what is it like to be there when such an unbelievable event happens?
It was, I mean, I'd always describe it as surreal or, almost an outer body experience when you understand what all those people were going through at that point in time. I think we were always very mindful of how much we meant when the time was right, when we came back and played, how much we meant to the city, to the fans, to everyone that was involved, the first responders, people that were going through horrible tragedies. I think we were just a little bit of an outlet and a little bit of a bright light for them to understand or have an out, have some sort of an out from what they were going through in their daily life. So once we came back, that was pretty awesome. Of course, the game with Piazza's home run is one. I mean, it still gives me chills when I watch the highlights from that. So it was special to be a part of that. We came back, when they did I think it was the 20th anniversary. They brought us a bunch of us back from the 2001 team, and when they were playing the Yankees at Citi Field, it was pretty cool to be back and be around those guys again.
And so now, after the season's over in the off season, you're part of this three-way trade that has about 1,000 guys in it. And
Yeah,
part of that sends you over to Milwaukee then. And your first start with Milwaukee is the home opener, right?
yeah.
And you had a day. And do you remember anything special that happened this day other than getting the victory?
Oh man, I had a day. That was a little league day, right? Where you pitch well, hit a home run, the whole thing. The only thing I didn't do that day was maybe sell candy and win the jacket from the candy sale or something like that. But man, it was incredible. I still go back and think about that game just because obviously the first thing you want to do when you get traded to a new team is you want to do well and you want to be there for your teammates and make the fans happy and make the front office that traded for you happy and everything. So I don't think I could have done any better job that day than I did.
How did it feel to step out of the box after hitting that ball? Did you know you got it all, or how did that feel?
Yeah, no, I knew I got it. It was a weird feeling because I'd never, other than all the BP we take, of course we hit some home runs, but to square one in the game, there's no better feeling. I was lucky enough to hit a few in my career, and that was number one. So I know Rick Helling still has a bad look on his face when he sees that highlight.
That's a great memory. I love it. And I thought it was funny looking at the box score for that game, either before or after. I want to say, including you, there was 4 or 5 guys in the lineup that were either Cubs before or after. It was like half Cubs. You could see Jose Hernandez here in the picture.
Oh
I think,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So it just was kind of funny.
yeah. Alex Ochoa. We got Ruben Quevedo right there. Rest in peace. He passed away. Matty Stairs. Yeah, a lot of of course the Sarge right there. Taking Sarge is probably taking credit for my swing right there because he was our hitting.
And so after a couple years in Milwaukee, you come over to the Cubs, sign in
Yeah.
2004, and it's kind of a weird situation with your career in Chicago, right? Because the Cubs were NL Central champions in 2003. You were signed, I believe, through 2007, right? And then 2007 they make the playoffs. But your time with the club fits right between those playoff appearances. How do you kind of remember your time in Chicago?
As special as it gets. I love being a Cub. I love the Cubs. I still follow the Cubs. I go back almost every year for the Cubs convention. It's such a special city. Watching my oldest now was, just born in '03. And so when I joined the Cubs in '04, he was running around when he was 1, 2, and 3 years old. And I got pictures of him, at the stadium and stuff. So it's pretty special. And I really probably one of my biggest regrets that I had no control over. But when I had the pulmonary embolism in 2006 was that I didn't get to play in 2007. I was one more year under contract, and I would have loved to be there. And I really would have loved to play for Lou Piniella, even though I know he doesn't love the pitchers the most. But just having him be the Mariners manager for so long, and I always thought he was a legendary manager, and heard some great stories. But unfortunately, I missed him.
Yeah, so one of the pictures here is actually of you batting. How do you feel about the new rules where pitchers don't bat anymore at all?
I'm not a fan at all. I love the National League game. I miss it. Not just selfishly because I love to hit. Of course, I love to be a part of the game and lay down a bunt or, swing the bat if I could and be incorporated into the game. But I miss the strategy of double switches, the way you use your bullpen, the way you use your bench, all that stuff is out the window, and I miss that.
And so 2004, you had 2 home runs, which puts you in some select company, at least for the club. There's only been 4 other guys before you, left-handed pitchers, that had multi-home run seasons, and Jason Marquis after you, but
Yeah.
it's a pretty short list here. As far as hitting home runs, how does it feel to circle the bases when you know that you might have to come up again and face the guy? Is there a potential that he's going to throw at me? Is he going to knock me down? How does that work as a pitcher?
Yeah, I never thought of that part of it, I don't think too much, because I didn't stand there and watch him. Once I hit him, I got moving. No pimping the homers when I hit him. I didn't hit enough to do that. But yeah, that year, for whatever reason, I swung the bat that year as good as I've ever did in my whole career, including funny story. When I first joined the Cubs, I had a 2 home run game in Iowa that year too. So I actually hit 4 that year between Iowa and Chicago. And the guys still talk about that. In fact, we were talking about it last week, and I ran into Brad Hopp, who was on the Colorado Springs team that we were playing in Iowa that year. And he was like, we didn't know who you were, Glendon, because I ended up joining those guys later on in my career in Colorado. And he's like, all we knew, you showed up and we're in Des Moines and you hit 2 home runs against us as a pitcher. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So you kind of touched on a little bit, but your career with the Cubs, or your time with the Cubs, kind of ended because of a health issue. You
Yeah.
said you had a pulmonary embolism?
Yeah, I had a blood clot at the end of 2006 in September. So I missed the rest of that year, the whole next year. I was out for basically like 18 months. And at the time when it happened, I was probably under the impression that I might be done altogether, because there was a chance I'd have to be on blood thinners the rest of my life. And so I was lucky that I had a great doc out in Southern California. And after a year, he gave me the opportunity to wean myself off the blood thinners and kind of start working out and seeing if I could get myself going again to potentially play again. And I was lucky enough to do that. That's probably one of the most proud parts I've had in my career, was after missing that long, 18 months, coming back and making it back to the big leagues and finishing out at that point in time, I was trying to still get my last year of service time to become a 10-year player.
And so was the 2007 season one that you didn't pitch at all professionally?
Nope.
Like, wow.
No, I was home all season in 2007. I thought I was basically done. Thought I was going to be medically retired after 2006. So I watched. I was under contract. Had one more season with the Cubs, which was lucky for me. But I didn't get any service time that year because of the way the rosters work, and who Jim Hendry, one of my favorite guys that I've ever been around in baseball, was our GM at the time. And Jim actually tried to get me all the way to spring training in 2007 on the roster so he could put me on the 60-day DL and give me a year of service time, because he thought that I probably might not play again. And the way that things happened in the off season, he had to take me off the roster, and he called me ahead of time and said, I really am sorry. I have to, with the roster moves we have to make and everything, I need your spot. And so it actually worked out fine, because I came back and did it on my own and did it as an active player.
Yeah. So after not pitching at all in 2007, you're back 2008, signed with the Padres, make it back to the bigs, right? And then you're traded that season over to Colorado.
Yep.
And in terms of pitching after the medical emergency, are you having some kind of consternation, like you think it might happen again? Or there's got to be a battle both physically and mentally too to come back, right?
I was pretty lucky. I think from a mental standpoint, I felt comfortable when I came back, and I felt healthy. I didn't worry about it. I was to pitch, and just I was ecstatic that I had the opportunity to come back and pitch again. It was very, very gratifying to go to spring training with the Padres in 2008 and made the club, as a non-roster guy, which is not easy to do. And so I came in there, and through the recommendations of Greg Maddox, who told Bud Black and Darren Balsley, the pitching coach at the time, that if I was healthy, they should take a chance on signing me that offseason, and they did.
And how do you feel like in terms of pitching in Colorado? Is there an appreciable difference in terms of how far the ball travels? Do you feel that? Do you see it?
Yeah, the one thing well, there's a couple things that I always talk to people about when they ask about pitching in Colorado. The ball, your breaking stuff spins a little different. But really the two things that beat you there the most are free bases and the size of the outfield. So the amount of balls that drop in, the amount of doubles that turn into triples, the outfield is enormous, obviously because of the dimensions. So there's a lot of stuff that falls in there, and if you can eliminate free bases, obviously walks and hit by pitches and giving up base runners and make them hit the ball to beat you there, you can be fine. And I actually didn't mind pitching there that much.
And so after 2009, then, are you pitching any longer? Are you still trying? Are you deciding you're going to retire from playing and coach? What was kind of the thought process there?
Well, I kind of went out on a little bit of a sour note. When I got designated by Colorado, I felt like I still had more in me. And at that point in time, I didn't pitch anymore. Looking back now, I kind of wish I did, because I was still completely healthy, throwing the ball well. It would have just been a matter of having to go back to AAA and pitch some more and work my way back. But I think for where I was at in my life with two young boys and being gone as much as I had, I felt like it was time to be home. So I was home for 5.5 years until I took the Padres job.
And so going back to the Padres, was it Mark Pryor that was with them?
Yeah.
At that point?
Yeah. So same coaching staff in the big leagues, Buddy Black and Darren Balsley. And then Mark Pryor got the job as the pitching coordinator for the Padres. And Trevor Hoffman and Mark Loretta were both in the front office as special assistants. So those guys all reached out to me and asked if I wanted to come interview for a job, and I did. And they were very nice and gave me the Lake Elsinore job, which was like 75 miles from our house in Southern Cal. So I was not too far away from home.
And so I don't know if you could see this picture here, but that's a pretty badass picture. I don't know if you remember taking this, but I love the back of this card.
Yeah, that's a bad mustache. Yeah.
And so how long were you with Lake Elsinore then?
I did that for 3 years. So I was there 15, 16, and 17. Absolutely loved it. Had a great time. Guys I coached with were awesome, and I still miss it. But I took a break so I could be home with my boys, and eventually I think hopefully when I'm an empty nester, I'll sneak my way back into it somehow.
And as far as at this point, you're coaching in college?
Yeah, so I helped out the last 2 years at Indiana University Southeast, which is right across the bridge from us in Indiana, New Albany, Indiana. Great NAIA program, and my son went over there 2 years ago, and the head coach then asked if I wanted to come help and be a part of the program, and I said yes. And so I've done it the last 2 years, and it's been a blast. Last year, the guys had an unbelievable run, went into the conference championship, ended up winning a region, and went to the NAIA World Series in Lewiston, Idaho. So we had quite a run last year, and just a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed being around the college game. That was my first time ever being around it. I was only around professional baseball, so I've had a really good time.
And how's your son doing?
He's doing great. He's learning how to pitch. He didn't start pitching until college, which is kind of crazy. And he's throwing the ball good, improving, and he went this summer and pitched for the Victoria Harbor Cats up in Vancouver in British Columbia. And so he had a blast doing that. And a junior next year.
Oh, very cool. It's
Yeah.
gotta be nice to be so close too, right?
Oh, it's great. Yeah, 30 minutes. I can be at their field from my doorstep, and it's a ton of fun.
Nice. Yeah, so at this point, you kind of have also a different pursuit, right? You are producing, directing, I don't know what the words necessarily would be, but a documentary. And
Yeah.
I'm sure the people that are on the call, when they see these four photographs, can maybe put together what the topic of the documentary is. Why don't you talk a little bit about how you got the idea and what the documentary is all about?
Well, I'd always been fascinated with these games. I'm sure everyone on the call will know what these games are all about. There's only been four guys to ever strike out 20 in a game, and of course Clemens did it twice. So um, probably the most fascinated, Clemens' first game when I was a kid in Seattle, because he did it against the Mariners, and just seeing that record, and then eventually my teammate, my eventual teammate and really good friend Kerry Wood did it, and of course Big Unit and Max. But I had the idea that nobody has really put this all together and put this story together with all four of these guys, and so I started with reaching out to Reed Ryan, Nolan's son, because we wanted to interview Nolan for the project, and that led to him introducing me to the gentleman Russell Groves, who produced Facing Nolan, who I'm sure all of you guys have seen that, which was tremendous, and they did a great job on it. And so Russell is working with me. Our executive producers are myself, Ryan Dempster, and Reed Ryan. And our director is Thaddeus Matula, who's done The Pony Excess and Brian the Boss 30 for 30 documentaries. He's directed both of those. And so we've completed about 45 interviews. We've done a good portion of some of the rough edit. We have all four of these guys in the film. We have Nolan Ryan in the film. We have some incredible names and people we've interviewed for it. Now we're just putting it all together and starting the process of figuring out how the film's going to all fit together. So I'm really excited about it. We've been working on it for quite a long time. It's probably getting close to 3 years in the making. So we're heading towards the finish line finally.
And what is your, in terms of, I don't know, deciding what is in the film? Do you have some control over that? What parts of interviews are coming in, things like that?
Sure. I think all of us will have some input once we see a first rough cut edit of the whole film. We have a sizzle reel / trailer that we've put together that's phenomenal. It's about 6 or 7 minutes long. Just kind of gives an overview of the project. But yeah, ultimately it's going to be if we show it to people and we have some ideas here and there, but Thaddeus will be the end man. He's the director, so he's going to put this thing together and the way he wants it, but yeah, we'll all have a little bit of input.
Have you considered like already what the sequel would be, like guys that have 10 strikeouts in a game? Because then you could be in that one, right?
Yes, we need to do that. No, the funny conversation we keep having is, occasionally we'll get I think it might have been last maybe a couple years ago or something, like DeGrom had like 14 through 6 in Colorado or something, and then we realized it was a doubleheader game, and there was only a 7 inning game, and then so we'll get this text thread going of what if somebody does it, but the more and more you think about it, with the way the game's played today, with the relievers, with the pitch counts, with everything else, I don't know if it'll ever happen again. I would have a hard time believing that it will, or that somebody would ever get more than that. But hey, if somebody can punch out 20, we'll be happy to add them into the film. They'll be a welcome addition.
And what's the time frame that, I know you probably don't know exactly, but when do you think we'll be able to see this?
Well, we think we would love to have it done by spring of 25 would be the ideal time. I think we'll finish whatever we need from an interview standpoint. We got actually a cool interview last year of Max, and he was reunited with Mike Maddox, who was his pitching coach when he did it. So they were back in Texas. So we got a little bit of footage with them at the World Series last year. We've got some cool stuff. So probably more than we need. We probably have enough footage and info, and interviews for a multi-part series, but I don't know if it'll end up being that way. I think it'll probably just be a standalone, hour and 40-minute feature film type thing. But yeah, that would be the goal. I think hopefully you guys will be able to see it. I'm sure we'll premiere it at some places and do some fun events around it. And then it'll probably come out on like video on demand first, and then eventually land on a streaming service. That's kind of the same path that Facing Nolan took when they did it.
Very cool. Well, I'm excited to see this.
Yeah, we're excited. Yeah.
Looks awesome. So you're a fun follow on Twitter. Like I said, I can tell you're a guy that loves baseball. But what is this? It's Kenny Powers? Is that what this is?
Yeah, that is my good friend Pat Roberts in California as an artist, and he does these. He is forever since I've known him. I used to train his son at our baseball academy when he was little, and he would make these baseball cards where he would put different faces on cards. Like he would put Lego heads on people, or it was just an art form of how he did his cards. And so of course I said, well, you got to make a Kenny Powers card for me. And so yeah, he took my heritage card and put the Kenny Powers on it.
Nice. And maybe you'll remember this one.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. I love it. I see that they always at least one person comes to the Cubs convention every year and has me sign that one. That's great.
So you're a music guy, right? You're friends with Tom Morello, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I've got some really good friends in the music business. Tom, of course, longtime Cubbies fan, extraordinaire. Yes. So yeah, I'm a huge music fan. I love all my, growing up in Seattle, and those were all my bands that I loved. So I was very lucky to, over the years through baseball and other acquaintances and different avenues, meet all these music heroes of mine, and we've all become friends over the years.
And so you're just back from a fun trip this past weekend. Where were you?
I went to Cooperstown. I was invited as a guest of Mr. Todd Helton, one of my good buddies and teammates, to be there for his induction. And so I hopped in the car, and luckily, because that was right when everything started getting screwed up with flying, everyone's planes were getting delayed and everything, I decided just to drive to Cooperstown, and I made a little trip out of it. I went up to Cleveland and saw a little bit of the Guardians Padres game on that Friday, and saw a bunch of my Padres buddies. And then I kept driving and spent the night. And then the next day drove to Cooperstown and went to the Rockies party for Todd. And then the following day went to the induction and then headed back home.
Were you disappointed at all you didn't make his speech?
No. He had the right people in his speech. I mean, look, he was, if you know Todd at all, he said it best during his speech that the last thing in the world he wanted to do is stand up there and talk about himself. He was spot on when it comes to that. He's a extremely humble guy, not a it's not his favorite thing to be a public speaker, but I thought he knocked it out of the park with his speech, and so did the other guys. I don't know Maurer at all. Obviously heard wonderful stories about Jimmy Leland, and then Adrian Beltre and I are friends, and we competed against each other a lot. So it was a really, really cool class that went in this year.
And kind of looks like over the course of your career, you did pretty well against Todd. He did pop a couple off you, but overall, I think he only had 4 hits out of 20 something at bats. He was under 200 against you. So
wow, we faced each other that many times, huh?
Yeah. You don't remember them? Is that what you're saying?
I remember some. I remember some. Sure, yeah, but the guy I couldn't think, which I don't think I ever did face. I don't think I ever faced Maurer. I think I must have missed him. Either that or he was, I was in the National League, of course, but I don't remember facing him.
And so when you're at the Hall of Fame for an event like this, I'm assuming you're being given some pretty nice access to things, maybe private tours and seeing things in the archives. Were you able to kind of get any baseball fix, see some old stuff that you never thought you'd see, anything like that?
Yeah, believe it or not, I skipped all that stuff this year because I had done some of it before. I was there 2 years ago I pitched in the Hall of Fame game when they play at Doubleday Field. So I was just there 2 years before that, and then 10 years before that, I was there for Maddox's induction. So I'd kind of already done the museum a couple times and everything else. So this time it was strictly party and induction for Todd.
Very nice. Very nice. So I think at this point, that was really all that we had kind of formal.
Yeah.
Just wondering if you had a few minutes, if anybody had any questions, they could just kind of raise their hands and we'll
Yeah,
if anybody's got anything to ask you.
absolutely.
It looks like Steve, you're raising your hand. You want to unmute yourself and ask? Go ahead.
Yes, so Glendon, thanks for doing this.
No
I'm in
problem.
Des Moines, Iowa, home of the Iowa Cubs.
Yeah.
So you said you played in Des Moines. What do you remember about playing in Des Moines, the stadium, the teams, the people?
The stadium's awesome. I remember I loved I think one of my first, if not my first ever AAA outing in 1996 was in Des Moines. And I remember it being really cold, hard to grip the ball, hard to get warmed up, because it was obviously I'm sure the first week of April
Yeah.
when we came in there with Omaha. But yeah, loved it there. Had a good time. I was only there maybe 2 or 3 weeks in 2004 when I joined the Cubs. And of course had that wonderful day there with 2 home runs, so I'll never forget that.
Thank you.
And one thing I did want to ask, we kind of were talking maybe a little bit before the session got started, but you have a card collection and you have some of your own cards, is that right?
Yes, I've been collecting and keeping my cards since I started. And so over the years I've just slowly kept them all, sorted through them, and then over the last few years I started sending some of them to SGC. I was telling you guys earlier, so I've started putting them in, holders and getting them graded. Not that the grades necessarily matter, but it's cool to have them in, the holders. And I wanted to have a nice collection for my boys, so they can have them.
Nice. So it looks like on the wall behind you there, you've got framed jersey. You can see the
Yeah.
Cubs one.
So I've got one of my rookie jerseys there. If I'm aiming it right, there we go. With the Kansas City, and then I got a Mets World Series jersey, and then a gray Cubbies jersey. Yeah.
Cool. And is that a bunch of baseballs in that cabinet behind you there?
Yeah, those are kind of like my mostly I would say either some of my favorite teammates or Hall of Fame guys that I collected over the years. As I would when I first got to the big leagues, like Tim Belcher was there, Jeff Montgomery, some of the veteran guys on my team in Kansas City taught me that if you were nice and sent a ball over to the other side, that guys would sign for you. And so I started to kind of, like if I went in town to get Frank Thomas's autograph or, a big name player that I liked and respected, I would ask them for a autographed ball. And so I've had a little collection over the years. I kind of slacked off as my career went towards the end, which I'm bummed I did now because I wish I had some more.
That's cool. Anybody else? Questions?
So Glenn, before we started recording, I think you were referring, did you have a story about obtaining one of your baseball cards?
Oh yeah. So that set that's in the jersey, the Mets jersey over here so Topps made a World Series set that year, and it was the Subway Series, and half Yankees, half Mets. And then each set came with what they called a Subway token card. So you'd have to buy a set, and out of that set, you'd only get one Subway token card. And I could never find mine. It took me like 20 years to find one. And randomly, I found some guy on eBay that had collected the whole set of Subway token cards. And so I sent him a message and said, "Hey, I'm interested in, buying one of these or whatever." And he said, "You're never going to believe this." He goes, "I have two of yours." And the guy was the nicest guy, and he couldn't believe that I was looking for my own. And so he sent me that one. He sent me that one at no charge, and I got it put in a case, and that's the only one I've been able to find. Pretty cool.
Nice. So I know you do a fair amount of interviews. Is there anything that you would love to be asked about, but no one ever asks you?
Mm. Well, that's a tough one. I think everyone kind of covers everything. I always feel like I'm pretty candid about talking about everything. Not that I can think of.
Okay. Like maybe
Yeah.
you're into horses or something, but no one ever asks you about horses.
I'm
That's
into
not expensive.
I'm into boxers. I'm into boxers. We have a house full of dogs.
Okay.
Yeah, and and to go back to the Des Moines, Iowa, that we were talking about earlier, my latest three boxers that I have are all from Des Moines, or all from Boone, Iowa, from the same breeder. And so I spent last year up with our good old friend Turk Wendell, who I'm sure all you guys know who Turk is. Turk lives in Des Moines now, and so I spent 3 or 4 days with Turk and picked up my puppy and came home. And so then this summer we got another puppy from the same lady, but this year I didn't go to Des Moines. That she shipped the puppy down here on there's a lady that drives dogs. And so long story short, I'm on my 7th boxer since my wife and I have been married. So
Wow.
we love them. Yeah.
Nice.
There's something that most people don't ask me about. Yeah.
Does Turk still brush his teeth between everything he does? I remember you go in the dugout and when he brushes teeth between innings or something.
Yeah, he does. He did everything. Turk's
Yeah.
amazing. One of the greatest guys. He was with us in Cooperstown this past weekend. So he's good friends with Todd as well, and played with him in Colorado for a little bit. And so it was fun to be with him. He's always a joy to be around. That guy's as good as it gets.
And so, I mean, you've obviously experienced a lot in baseball. If someone was to ask you, what is your favorite story from your career, whether it's about you or somebody else, what's the story that you go to?
I don't think there's any one. I think of many. I think the number one thing that always stuck out to me in baseball is the relationships and the friendships. And to this day, being 31 years later since I signed out of high school, I have so many friends and guys that I've played with or coached with or played against that I run into and talk with. And now of course we can all be a little more connected via social media. I've become friends with guys that I never even played with, but played against. And then we become friends 10, 15 years later on social media. And, it's a big fraternity. And I love all the stories. I love going back and talking with those guys. And I think that's what sticks out to me the most.
Nice. Well, unless anybody else has a question for Glendon, I think we're kind of at the hour now. Anybody else have anything else they wanted to ask?
If Danny Evans was on here, he'd want me to talk about playing long toss in Pasadena for sure. If we didn't skip that. There was a park in Pasadena in the off season when I was working out, and there was like lawn bowling there. There was people everywhere, and we'd go out in the middle of this park and be throwing like over the top of people. And he loves that story because there was nowhere to throw at the indoor facility. So we'd go to this park, and there are people looking at us like, "Why in the world are you guys out here throwing baseballs in the middle of a park in Pasadena?" It was pretty funny.
Is Dan a guy that was at one point your agent?
Yeah, he helped me. He helped me out when I came back. So he was working for the group there in Pasadena, close to where I lived, and the guy that owned the building there, Bill Schuper, had this incredible indoor facility, and so I did all my workouts there. Yeah.
Okay, nice. All right, so you've been out to Field of Dreams then?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was there for the Cubs Reds game. I went.
Oh, cool. How was that? How was that experience?
It was awesome. And it was so cool because the Cubs, invited a bunch of us alumni to come. And so I went up and spent a bunch of time there. Of course, spent some time with Dan there, and it was great. The last time I had been there was for the 25th anniversary of the Field of Dreams movie. We played like a celebrity softball game there, and it was incredible. That was my first time ever being there. So being back and seeing what they did and how they built that field for the big league game was awesome. And I heard it's going to be even better when they bring it back, which I think, is it supposed to come back next year?
I don't know. I'm not sure what the story is.
I heard they were building it out. The story that I heard when I was there, last year or however long ago that was that they were going to take a year off. They were completely building it out so they would actually have facilities there, with showers, bathrooms, everything else that went along with the actual stadium. And then the following year they would take a year off and then come back. So we'll see.
Cool. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Glendon. This was fun.
Absolutely.
If you if you don't mind, we'll ask people to follow you on Twitter. You're a good follow. And,
Yeah.
hopefully I'll see you at the Cubs convention coming up next year.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for having me,
All right.
guys.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
All right. See ya.